So, here I am, another bearded guy, ranting about Star Wars on the internet. So I might as well just go ahead and get that over with and discuss what Star Wars means to me. Star Wars means a lot of things to a lot of people. To some people, Jedi is actually a recognized religion. To a great deal of the planet, it's just another goofy fantasy space soap opera where super space wizards kill each other with flashlights. Some find it just like any other power culture or fandom, like they would a sports team or some normie series to follow. It's another genre. It's another consumable. To its new handlers, it appears, it's just another cash cow. It's just another property to exploit. They seem as though they're mishandling the series. At least, that's what I think. It seems like they are handling the sequel trilogy in a way that proves they had no real intention to honor the original creators and contributors. I was born in the 80s, so I had the full scope of what was considered George Lucas's entire story. I've always existed in a world where Star Wars has been a thing. Even if I didn't understand the story, it was available. I watched it with every other type of movie as though that's just what you did. We had bootleg Betamax copies of the series recorded from TV broadcasts, complete with commercials. My brother and I had our rooms decked out in Star Wars memorabilia, from bed sheets and toys to models and hand-painted R2-D2 ceramic coin banks. My family's mostly nerds. We're pretty proud of our nerddom. Most of us obsess over one thing or another, and the common thread is Star Wars. My brother and I always had something to obsess over and discuss, something to geek out over. Some kind of fantasy or sci-fi. My sister was in choir during high school, so I got a great deal of influence from her and her love of music. The folk split when I was 10. My siblings were old enough to move away, and I was caught in the middle. And like every kid whose parents break up, I had a little bit of resentment for both of them. But my friends, the church, and fandoms helped me get over that. Star Wars was the biggest. Up until that point, I never really had much trouble discussing things with my parents. But of course, a divorce will do that. And Dad and I really couldn't communicate very well, except when we were talking about movies, especially Star Wars. George Lucas stated in an interview that Star Wars, when reduced, could be explained as a father and son relationship story with the backdrop of an interstellar conflict. And that was just really interesting to me. Mainly because the story arc that Luke took helped me to cope with what I was going through. The relationship dynamic between Anakin and Luke was something I could discuss with my dad. We couldn't talk about much together because of the divorce, the way I perceived it. Dad and I didn't really connect on a lot of things, as far as I understood, because his upbringing, he was from a small town. I've always lived in some kind of suburb. I've always been a suburb kid. He played the sports ball, and I wanted absolutely nothing to do with sports. band pretty much sealed that for me. I hated the sports ball. I wanted to just play video games and read comic books, play with my G.I. Joes, that sort of little kid consumerism. By the time I hit 4th grade, I was all about X-Men and playing music. I got into art a little bit. I was definitely my father's son, and I loved my family, but there was always some weird chasm and disconnect, as with most kids in that situation. We had little in common after I hit 5th grade, except for the common thread of Star Wars. We could sit and talk for hours about a franchise that wrapped up 15 years prior. We could communicate about things without bringing up any sensitive topics about the divorce or a mom's side of the family. We didn't have to discuss my failing grades at a school I hated. We didn't have to discuss music when he couldn't read notes on a page. We didn't have to discuss engine maintenance when I couldn't understand a car manual or wiring diagram. We didn't have to discuss sports when I didn't care about them. We didn't have to worry about upsetting each other with inflammatory comments. We didn't have to discuss politics or religion, even though later that's all we talk about now. We could geek out together. We could build models together. We could go fishing and talk about all of the different relationship dynamics in the series, especially between Luke and Anakin. We could communicate. We didn't have to be distant. Star Wars was a catalyst. 3 stupid sci-fi fantasy movies about space wizards who kill each other with flashlights helped a father and son with a messy situation. Dad is not a video game dude, but when Shadows of the Empire came out for Nintendo 64, he watched me play it. He wanted the story. Again, another Lucasfilm property helped us bond. We even geeked out over the prequel trilogy. Even though it had its problems, it was, for the most part, handled with respect. I still bought into the hype and enjoyed the movies as they came out. Star Wars breached a divide for us. It was a form of therapy. And the franchise helped us become better people. The sequel trilogy has not been the same. The Force Awakens was okay, but as many have stated, there were a lot of wasted opportunities. Episode 7 should have been a family reunion. We should have seen our heroes as we have grown. 30 years later, things change. Families change. New people show up. People are born. People pass on. Han, just one man's opinion, Han should have been a grandfatherly figure with a beard. Pearls of wisdom to pass to the new generation. Leia should have been a grandmother. That original, strong, empowered female figure. Like my grandmother, who was born during the Great Depression. Luke should have been some kind of optimistic wild hippie. The uncle who told ridiculous stories of his youth and what not to do. But of course that would reference the EU, wouldn't it? The original cast should have had the opportunity for one last mission. Actors are getting older. Some have passed away in real life. We don't get that opportunity back. The studio should have handled the franchise as though they were a family. It's obvious that Disney should not have decanonize the expanded universe only to rip it off later. There should have been some sense of community between our characters, as there was before. We actually got to see them move through the story and have their story arc together. The way the series was treated in Last Jedi was as though somebody was berating my good name, if I have a good name. It was offensive. It was an affront. It was almost as though the studio was berating the relationship I have with my dad and my brother. And by extension, my family, my cousins. We all grew up in this. It was a staple. Like Christmas and Thanksgiving, like Sunday service. It was what you did. And they smeared it. It felt like they were just bashing my entire family. It was really personal. You know, did I mention this is a religion to some people? I haven't decided if it's incompetence or wanton dismantling. Either way, the sentiment I get is the same. It feels as though they are purposely trying to ruin a series by doing everything wrong. I don't understand the marketing model of attacking your customers. I don't understand what target market they're going for. It seems as though they're going after people who are not fans of the series. They're trying to promote to people who don't care. You can call me all the names in all the languages and all the books and all the libraries, but I still feel the same about the situation. You know, when Rian Johnson calls critics of the fandom a bunch of man babies or cousin humpers, when actors involved in this creation state we should shut up and just take what the studio gives us, that it's just a kids movie. By the way, it's a kids movie where people get cut in half, dismembered, disemboweled, beheaded, blown up, electrocuted, set on fire, and mass democide is committed. This is a time when Kathleen Kennedy wears apparel to events that spotlight her agenda and politics that she is so thoroughly injecting into the entire series. When the head of the company admits it's garbage, when major characters tell the audience to kill and disregard the prior 40 years of content, and that we should move on. When it's discovered that George Lucas's script for Episode 7 gets shelved so that the castle and mouse people can use their lower quality product. I can't simply ignore that. I cannot disregard. Disney Star Wars has been mismanaged on a level that's offensive. I don't think I'm alone in this. Now, Mom passed away last year. I don't get to watch movies with her anymore. And the great depressing thing is, I don't think I will ever see another good Star Wars film with my dad ever again. Probably not my brother. And it's starting to look like my children who have yet to be born will not get to watch a good Star Wars movie with their father in theaters unless they bring back the original trilogy in theaters, which is something it looks like Disney is trying to completely overwrite. Thanks, Disney.